Hello, listeners, and welcome to The More You NoCo. This podcast is about bringing together the community of Northern Colorado by showcasing awesome people and ideas of the area. However, I was spending some time in Tulsa, Oklahoma for the holidays, and I got the chance to feature some of my close friends on the show. I started The More You NoCo as a podcast that aimed to increase the sense of community and connection in the areas north of Denver. Today's guest feels that same exact passion and concern for her surroundings. She is a scientist and advocate for her community of Tulsa, Oklahoma. She's a great friend of mine, and she has a story that I think many people will both relate to and can learn from. Give it up for Kaitlyn Beard. Hello and welcome, listeners of The More You NoCo. I sit here in person in her home with Kaitlyn Beard, who is a lab technician and local scientist for a steel company here in Oklahoma. So hello, Kaitlyn, and welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on the show and making time here coming up on the holidays. Now, let's start your story for the listeners when you are wrapping up your undergraduate degree at OSU.
At OSU, I was a geology major. I was very involved in research there, which really fostered my love of science and environmental geology, hydrogeology, things of that nature. You may have heard, you may remember the earthquake situation that was happening back then.
So for the fans at home, there was a period of time in Oklahoma where we were having an unusually large amount of earthquakes, and they were more intense than normal, right?
Yes, so we have always had earthquakes because we have massive fault systems in our state. We've always had small earthquakes, thousands a year here in Oklahoma. But what happened was, those listening may remember and be familiar with the massive controversy that was surrounding fracking and things like that.
And it was still a big discussion in Colorado.
Yeah, absolutely. Being a geology major, I kind of got both sides, working with the environmental professors, doing that research, but also being in the geology department at Oklahoma State University, which is very heavily revolves around oil and gas. I was really able to delve into it almost objectively. Now, myself, personally, What
do you mean almost objectively?
Well, because I got it from both sides. So
what both sides are you talking about? Conservation and then a corporate standpoint?
Conservation, working with the environmental, working with the Nature Conservancy, but then also being surrounded on a daily basis by people that were in favor of fracking practices and things of that nature. And I was able to form those opinions myself, getting information from both sides. So what a lot of people don't understand is that fracking itself has been so scrutinized that it has become fairly well regulated. Just the act of fracking and extraction. However, when you extract that oil out, you have wastewater. What do you do with it? And that was the portion of the process that was not heavily regulated. So what they would do with this wastewater is they would just pump it back into the ground wherever they thought they could. 20 feet away, 200 feet away. They didn't care. Just pump it back into the ground. Now, I'm being not very specific with the entire process, but that's basically what happened, is they would just pump it back into the ground. Well, going back to talking about the massive fault systems that we have in our state, what would happen is they would just inject this water in so frequently and in such heavy pockets, such heavy areas, that it would cause massive lubrication and slippage events in our fault systems. So that is what was causing these massive earthquake events. That's why we started having these larger and larger and larger earthquakes. Obviously, it being an issue because we're not equipped to deal with earthquakes architecturally in our Earth. So my research was based in a cave system that had a massive fault running adjacent to it. and I studied what's called hypogenic and epigenic flows through this cave system. So hypogenic meaning from depth and epigenic meaning superficially. So I went into this cave and studied what was deposited along the walls, what the influx of water was, and what it ended up being was both hypogenic and epigenic flows through this cave, which made it very interesting. Just looking at kind of puzzle pieces, my research team and I, one would go to a different site, I would go to this cave site, etc., and we would help each other out with this research. And that was a great time in my life to foster my love for science, conservation, and environmental protection, because it was absolutely a ridiculous thing to happen. And had we hit a higher magnitude, which, not to cause any sensationalism, could still happen, it would build up and build up and build up and have a massive event leading to a high magnitude earthquake. So that's why that was happening as I was doing this research.
Right.
And Todd Hallahan was my professor and mentor, and he has some interviews online about that, and people are still doing studies over it over years, pockets of years, to see what's going on. We haven't had a large one, thankfully, because we finally started coming up with systems to inject that water into more strategic locations, but it's a flawed system. You don't want to put that contaminated water or massive amounts of water back into the earth anyway. So yeah, that was the research that I was doing as I left my undergrad in geology. That left me thinking, what can I do actively every single day? I don't want to just be a scientist, just make all of that money that some of my counterparts were starting to make, or I didn't want to go into grad school for geology, because I would have basically I could have gone into environmental geology, but I was more interested in being with people, public outreach. We did some public outreach while I was doing my research in rural areas of Oklahoma, helping them to find water resources for their rural communities, things like that. And I really enjoyed that aspect. I was also in residential life at Oklahoma State and loved teaching my students what I knew about this, fields of STEM, teaching them other things, being there for them, conflict resolution, things of that nature. So I didn't go directly into grad school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But my capstone was going to Colorado, Cannon City, Colorado area for 6 weeks. I basically got to hike around and experience that area, which was really lovely. Did you get thrown in the prison down in Kansas City while you were there? No, not quite. I did not tell my mother about those, though. I think but she found out anyway. She did. Like, did you know there are 3 federal prisons down there? It's like, oh, yeah, yes, I didn't see any escapes. I'm hanging out with them right now. Yeah, exactly. They're doing just fine, don't worry. Didn't see any escaped convicts or anything like that, but that was a really great experience getting out to do that research in the field again, and just put me into more of a confusion as to what I wanted to do. And why was that? Why was 6 weeks in Cannon City doing field research, capping out your undergrad degree? Why was that more confusing? Being out in the field, hand making maps, really being not so much in Cannon City, but also being surrounded by people that were very reverent of the surrounding areas and conservation, sustainability, things like that. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to stay out there. But no one hand makes maps anymore. The romanticism of it is no longer. I thought, I can make maps, through programming and things of that nature. But what about my skills being with people? What about what's going on in Oklahoma right now with our education crisis? What about that? What about those kids that want to go into STEM fields, but they have no resources? And I couldn't just go do research and field work with that happening. A lot of organizations, you can do that with, however, they just having an undergraduate in a STEM field, you don't have the program planning experience, the curriculum writing experience. So I took a job as a lab technician for a local steel company. I've enjoyed the science, but it also really made me stop and think about what I want to do. And if you just work and do your work, I'm doing some chemistry and metallurgy work right now, and sometimes it's isolating. The science is nice and it appeals to my more meticulous side. It still left me feeling like I wanted to get out there and be doing something every day to better my surroundings. I love Tulsa. I don't want to leave because I think that it is really coming along, showing some shades of purple, blue and red. All of these people coming in to the city and the surrounding area, opening breweries, starting up these conservation organizations, Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance, Up with Trees, places like that.
So where does that put you now?
So I'm considering teaching maybe for a time. I'm pursuing my teaching certificate, my alternative teaching certificate. I think I would like to get my master's in something like public administration or environmental policy to go in and work with nonprofit management companies, municipalities, local governments, things of that nature to really foster that programming, education, development, providing our local teachers with resources to teach their children about STEM fields in general, not just conservation and things like that, but STEM, fostering STEM at all. I have a little brother, and we went to the Tulsa Air and Space Museum, and they were having a robotics competition, and he was just fascinated. But he's from a small town outside of Tulsa. He lives in a small town outside of Tulsa, and they don't have a robotics program. They don't even teach physics in high school if there aren't enough people to fill the class. Those rural communities, not only do our teachers, they don't get paid anything, hardly, not even a living wage. And how are they supposed to be concerned about other people's children, and not to mention them not even being able to foster their passion for education when they can't even pay their own bills? It's ridiculous.
Right.
So that's why I would like to work with these nonprofit organizations popping up around the Tulsa area, be involved with them and their programming departments, work as hard as I can fostering that in our area. Eventually, I think I'll be able to go into a position that could be threefold for me: doing research, public outreach, and education. Those are higher up positions, more specific positions, but I'm starting to pursue that path.
So it's kind of a nebulous place you found yourself in, because you got interested in geology and water conservation because of research and the science base. Something grew within you over time, and all of a sudden you felt like, not only do I love the community that I live in and I want to do something about that, but I also enjoy the aspect of education, teaching people. And I live in a state where education is not the best. Oklahoma is near the bottom in any ranking of education that you could draw up on a list. And so you're stuck in between, public discourse, education, like teaching students, and science and being out in the field and stuff that you like. And so here you are today, not with any answer, but instead the questions about which direction you want to go and what do you want to do.
It's definitely almost feels like a rebellion on my part, almost, because of where I live. Somehow fostered within me was a love of education and a love of sustainability and conservation and the environment. I live in a state that is not, in general, passionate about either one of those things. And thankfully, we've started discussing education. It's about time. I can't believe it didn't happen earlier, but the teacher marches on the Capitol have been absolutely wonderful, and they did get their raise, but they're still lacking in so many ways, and it's really, really heartbreaking. Not to mention, and I'll just bring it up, Scott Pruitt becoming the head of the EPA. That was absolutely counterintuitive to me.
And to the reason you're in your career.
Yes.
Yeah.
And putting a man that sued the EPA multiple times as the head of the EPA didn't make sense to me at all. And it didn't make me feel very good about my state whatsoever. However, like I said, I feel like it's almost a rebellion because I refuse to quit. And I would move away if there was a good enough opportunity, but staying here and helping to foster what is happening, what is starting to happen, the baby steps that are being taken in Tulsa and the surrounding area right now as far as education and environmental education and policy goes. I just really want to get in on the ground floor of that and help foster that and help build that to where we're better.
And you told me before we started recording that you're randomly starting to cold call and cold email and reach out to people who are already involved in these processes.
Absolutely. That is something that I would recommend to anyone trying to figure out, especially what they want to do. I was hesitant at first. I'm not going to call this person. I'm not going to just send a personal email to this person. They're not going to read it. They're not going to answer my call. They're not going to call me back, etc. They're so busy. All of these thoughts going through my mind until I actually made myself sit down and do it. And I just had lunch with one of the program directors the other night, and we had a wonderful conversation. And she told me that with my background and what I've done and the skills that I'm expressing that I have, she said I was saying all the right things, and though she doesn't have a position for me, she has an opportunity for me to help them research their education methods, going out and teaching these students how to plant trees, the conservation surrounding that, urban forestry, etc. At very least, I'm gonna get that experience, and I made a friend of a like mind, of like heart, and that's wonderful to meet someone like that. And so, if someone's doubtful as to where they should be, what they should do, my biggest recommendation is to just start calling, start emailing anyone that you can, and maybe you won't get responses from some, but I just emailed her and she said, let's have coffee, and now I have a new contact.
There are a lot of people possibly listening to the show or just who exist out there who want to do something for their community, and then there's some negative self-talk that comes in the way, peeks around the curtain and says, actually don't do that.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be worth it. People are not going to react the way that you want them to, or it's going to be a waste of time.
Yeah.
And they don't do it. And people end up being stuck in a job they might not enjoy as much, or they might not bring their community a great project that could have flourished into something that's very amazing if watered and given some time and patience. And we're not talking about like grandiose marches that change a state forever. I mean, we're talking about like a person who enjoys science and who enjoys field research may be able to better serve themselves and their community by being a teacher instead. We're talking about small things like career shifts, or, I've been thinking about leaving my job for 4 years. Maybe it's time.
Right.
And, listening to yourself and your true passions and what you really want, both for yourself and for the surrounding community.
And you have to ask yourself what's important to you, because, and I'm not trying in any way, if a person wants to go out and just do field research, or if they want to go to work every day because they want to provide for their family, whatever is important to you, pursue it head on. It's not easy. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time, and it's not easy to figure out what that thing is to make yourself satisfied or happy. Putting your foot forward, getting your toe in the door, even just volunteering is an amazing way to open those doors, because you just won't get anywhere if you just sit wishing you could be doing something else. Because
it's silence. It's within your own head, and if you don't at least look at yourself in the mirror long enough, or even talk to the person next to you about it, then it will never go anywhere.
Exactly. You also have to learn how to be selective, because there are people in your life that won't support what you're doing a lot of the time, or they may love you very, very much, but they might have opinions that alter the way that you think, and overcoming that is a huge challenge sometimes.
It can be hard to defy tradition and family and people who say, actually, Kaitlyn, I don't think that'd be a great career shift, and I don't think you should do it.
Right.
And saying, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And smiling for now, but still knowing what might be best for you.
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because you remind me of multiple people in my life that says it is okay to not have life figured out yet. Because
Absolutely.
most people, or I don't know if I want to say most, a lot of people are walking around and we look like we have it all figured out, but we don't. And you have completed a degree, you worked hard for it, you got the job, and you are still sitting here saying today on this microphone, I'm not really sure this is where I need to be. It's not really what... I'm not really sure if this is what I want to do and how I could best serve the people around me and the ideas I really care about. I think it's important for people to hear that it's all right, and it could take a decade to really find ourselves in our work and the career we truly want.
Right, absolutely. Even if you do that outreach, like you said, it could be years before you land that full-time position with a livable wage. Don't give up. For months there, I just sat back and thought, how do I get here? What do I do? I wasn't going out and volunteering. I wasn't emailing people. I emailed several people and just poured my heart out. That was what it took to get these meetings with people. Oh, I can do this? That's exactly what I should be doing. I thought for a while the only way I would be able to do anything, to do the mix of things that I wanted to do is to become a college professor. And yes, it's appealing and maybe that will happen one day for me, but there's also other options as well, and it took me a long time to figure those out because I was trying to do it all by myself, and it was a lonely, hard process. Even having wonderful friends and a wonderful significant other, they have other passions, and they supported me, yes, but didn't know what to tell me as far as where to go, what to do. So putting yourself out there, even though it's hard, is the way to go. So I think you told me that you took a similar path.
I just uttered the phrase earlier this morning that what I'm doing right now, I make less than half of the money that I used to.
Right.
But I am a happier person. And I live a happier weekly life because the career that I'm doing and what I'm involved in now is much more meaningful to me, and it's more directed at where I feel like my place in the community is.
Right.
And that takes sacrifice. I mean, for one, there's financial, but two, I had to go back to school again to do what I wanted in a completely different direction from what I had previously said that I had set out to do. And that's not easy.
No.
And it's not cheap. It's not financially cheap, and it's not emotionally cheap, and it's not cheap on time, and there's a lot of sacrifice, but I live and breathe the career and the job that I know I want right now, and that's just something that you can't replace.
Right. Having this full-time job and talking to that program director, she wants me to help her with this research into their environmental curriculum, and that will probably take up the rest of the free time that I have, but it's what I want to do, and I will be happy doing that. I don't know who said this, but I saw a quote one time that said, nothing is as painful as being where you don't belong. I think nothing can be truer than that. It's just is in a lot of tiny ways painful not to feel passionate about what you're doing.
And I imagine there are people listening who say, well, that's great. Kaitlyn, you know what you want. You know what you want to do. You know how the impacts you want. Ivan, that's great. I'm glad you're doing what you know you want to do. And they're sitting there saying, I don't know what I want to do. I just know it's not here. And
Right.
that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to be stuck in this nebulous, in-between area that is full of ambiguity and uncertainty, and you're not really sure. You just know you kind of don't want it. That's fine. Take time. There's no pressure
Right.
cooker. I feel like young adults, millennials, dirty millennials, they are expected to have life figured out by 23. Just get out there, do
Right.
it, get your job, work hard. What do you mean you don't know what you want to do? Decide. You went to school, didn't you? Don't you already have that in mind?
Exactly.
And maybe the argument could be said that for previous generations, this didn't exist, and maybe it was better to not have as much choice. I mean, and psych studies have shown that an over-prevalence of choice can actually be crippling, and it can actually detract from our happiness if we're given too much choice or even the illusion of choice. So maybe sometimes being handed something and having a path laid out for us might make us happier, but we live in this world where we have more career choices maybe than any generation before us.
Absolutely.
And it's okay to still be figuring that out.
Yeah.
Well into your 20s, well into your 30s, well into your 40s. I have students in my psych classes that are way older than me. And that is awesome to me. They are back in school, they have a passion, they want to be there, and they're enjoying it.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous how a 22-year-old is supposed to decide the next 50 years of their life. You know, I heard, obviously, in my bachelor's degree, most people don't do what they graduate in. And I brushed it off. What does that even mean? Of course I'm going to do what I'm getting a degree in. But no, I'm looking at going an entirely different route.
Yeah, we're not maligning people who get a job at 16 and they stay at the company forever.
Exactly.
Because you already know where you want to be and where you're quote-unquote supposed to be.
And that's wonderful.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yes.
But there are many people who are not in that situation.
Right. And like you said, people who are not in that situation that are 50 years old. It's never
or
too
60.
late.
There are people who change careers in their 60s.
Exactly. And never be discouraged. I was discouraged for a minute because I got through this entire degree. Like you said, I spent all of this time and effort doing it. I was discouraged for a while because I don't want to do oil and gas. For a minute, I thought, what a waste of time. But then I really started thinking about it and thinking about all of the research that I've done and all the people that I met and the networking that I have now. None of it was a waste of time. It was all a great experience. I left college with all of these skills, not necessarily the best geologist in the world, but I was in residential life. I got people skills from that. I've been in research situations in the field that I will never experience again. It's all about having those experiences and learning from that and building on everything that you do.
And not being embarrassed about redirections.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
We have a friend that recently changed his career. He went to school for culinary. He bounced around jobs, cooking and being a chef. And now he does something that doesn't involve food at all.
Right.
And he's way happier.
Right.
And I used to, when people would ask me what my undergrad degree was or what did I want to be when I grew up, I would get embarrassed because I was like, well, you're about to hear a rap sheet of the most random things you can imagine.
Right.
But the truth was, I didn't know. And maybe the truth, as I sit here today, is that I still don't know. But as of right now, I enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
And I just think, I hope people hear this and feel that if they're in one of these spots, they feel just a little push of bravery to get out there and just grab opportunity. And if it seems like opportunity's not there, turn the flashlight on and let's get searching.
Absolutely. I was in a holiday play last year, and it was one of the most fun times I've ever had. And I met some local people, and I just had so much fun, and I just let loose. No, I don't want to become a professional actress. Getting out and doing things like that, even, you never know who you'll meet. It's not just going out and getting that job. Sometimes that job will have requirements that you aren't even close to having, but chipping away at that and finding that path is doable.
And like multiple guests on the show, people had issues and they made their career from it. They made a job. They didn't get hired. They started their own business because they saw an issue in their community and they wanted to solve it.
And a lot of people have those businesses and are still working 80 hours a week
other jobs
to fulfill their dreams, and that's what passion's all about.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're struggling in an existential career or passion situation, you're not alone.
Absolutely not.
And hopefully you feel just a little bit more emboldened in your search by today's talk. So thank you, Kaitlyn, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it. Do you also enjoy the music used here at the More You NoCo? I want to shout out my good friend Russell Isaac Long for always giving us those hot fire tracks. Are you looking for a little bit of bonus content in addition to the episodes of the More You NoCo? Check us out on Facebook or Instagram at the More You NoCo. Original, right? Don't worry, we'll be back soon. Until next time, peace!